Through the years, I have collected things from other speakers, from books, this, that, and the other, uh, and especially from what used to be is now the Equip workshop. I've taken several things from there. This is one by Lindsay Curtis. These are just common sense things that show that a marriage is in trouble. So we go through them. Number one, when courtesies are abandoned. When you quit doing things to look out for your partner, to just help them, to be considerate. Maybe it's opening a door, maybe it's making them a cup of coffee, whatever it might be. When couples begin to think of in terms of I instead of we, when you start planning things based upon what just you want, what you're going to do, you're no longer a team. I've been having trouble downloading some of my photos to get them to the screen. They're getting to my computer, but I can't get them up on the screen. But I hope by next week I can show you a picture that I ran across this week on Facebook in Romania. There is a village where there is a room where they put couples wanting a divorce for 2 weeks. I guess they lock them in that room. One chair, one table, one plate, one fork, one knife, one everything. It's said that after being in there, only one couple followed through with a divorce. Maybe there's something about having to work together and think of we instead of I. Number three, when they stop complimenting each other. We need to be our partner's best cheerleader. We need to be looking for things to tell them, you look good, you did a great job with that, I appreciate that, more so than anyone else in their lives. Number four, when stubborn silence replaces common sense communication. What did I say about the four horsemen? The very worst thing is stonewalling. If you're not communicating at all, you're certainly not going to solve problems. Sometimes having arguments is very, very tough, and it takes a lot out of you. But you need to talk it through if at all possible. Number five, when they stop praying together. This is something, again, I tell especially newlywed couples during their premarital counseling. Learn to pray holding hands. Pray together. There's something about it that it just is better for you. And it unifies you looking toward God in your relationship. Number six, when they fail to sense and meet the needs of each other. That goes back to my love list. When you quit doing things for them to show that they love you, there's going to be a void. They're going to be missing something. And number seven, when they fail to express love. Now we're going to get into a subject that will make many of you uncomfortable, sex. If you think this subject makes you uncomfortable, just remember that I had to once teach a class with my mother in it on sex. And she was one that would never discuss that subject under any circumstances. Thank goodness for library books where I was able to find out about sex in a healthy way. And just like the slide says, sex is like air. It's not an emergency until you can't get any. And then it's critical. In marriage, the Bible talks about love, honoring, cherishing, mutual submission, understanding, being respectful, all kinds of things. It also talks about sex in marriage. It is part of that. It is an integral part created by God to be a part of the marriage. It's us humans who have made it into something dirty or profane. It can be a renewable source of admiration with, or admiration of, satisfaction with, and a desire for one's spouse if it's practiced properly. Now we got to be careful, especially in this day and age. Do not judge sex by what society or the media says or portrays, because most of it is bunk. And people will say this has got to be done or that's got to be done. I think it was Cosmopolitan magazine, I've heard comedians always talking about that, 10 easy ways to do this and do that. And they always had this gimmick or something. But a lot of it just wasn't worthwhile. The specifics of a sexual relationship are up to each individual couple and are no business of others. What a couple decides should be what both are satisfied with and will meet each other's needs. I'm telling you, don't even make decisions about sex on what many Christians say about it. Look at what the Bible has to say and pay particular attention to what it doesn't say. If you'll notice, there are a lot of subjects that the Bible is very quiet on. In other words, God is trying to leave that open. He gives you the parameters that He wants you to stay within, and then it's up to you from that point on. I've heard a lot of Christians express personal opinions about what God allows or doesn't allow, but it's not based upon what the Bible says. It's just their personal opinion. Frequency, methods, positions, etc. are individual. The Bible is silent on that, and so we must keep silent. Couples always seem to get advice before they get married, and I remember getting several opinions about marriage, but there's only one thing that has stayed with me to this day. Whatever is done, do it in love. Whatever is done, do it in love, and you will pretty well be on good ground. Also, use some common sense. There are some things that we shouldn't have to be told that they shouldn't be practiced. So what about when it comes to sex for a woman? This is some of the ideas from the book for men only. Number one, her lack of desire for sex usually has nothing to do with her desire for you. And I'm telling you that many times we as men don't understand that. We have it the other way around. And so we have trouble comprehending that a desire or lack of sex is not tied to her desire for us. Number two, she has a lower sex drive, and many women would change that if they could. It's just the way God made us. You look at society, you look at history, you look at anything else, men always have a higher sex drive proportionally to women. Number three, she needs more time to get in the mood for sex. I'll have a slide a little later on that will address this. I talk about giving flowers, and what I said, never give your wife a dozen flowers. It's a universal sign for you messed up. Buy a single rose 12 different times. And give her one of those roses first thing in the morning. Start the day with things like that. Make a phone call. Text her. Tell her how much you love her. And get her in the mood. Number four, she is not likely turned on by your body. Once again, here's something we as men have trouble understanding. We are turned on by your body, okay? That's just universal. Women, not so much. That's probably a good Good thing for some of us, because when we start developing our pot bellies and flab and all those other things, then we can still get by with it, you know. Number 5, for her, sex starts in the heart. Men are visually stimulated. A woman is stimulated by her emotion, how she feels, her emotions, what she's feeling inside. Number 6, she wants pleasure as much as you do. However, what she wants to achieve pleasure may differ from you. That's where you have to communicate. What is it you want? You actually need to talk to each other about sex even. I like this. I don't like this. Please do this, a little, try to be diplomatic. And I'm going to be a little bit crude here. My nipples are not a radio dial. Okay? Be gentle. Number 7, her emotional desire regulates her sexual desire. Again, something that we as guys don't really understand. So, what's a guy to do? Well, first of all, pay attention to her. Make her special in your life. Compliment her. Listen to her. Going to number 2, sometimes just hug her, just to hug her, not expecting anything else in return. Number 3, always pursue her. This really goes for both male and female. We need to continue dating. Marriage does change with age. Love changes with age. Wants and likes and all those other things sometimes change with age. You've got to keep up with that. You have to pursue. You need date nights. You need special events. Number 4, warm her up by giving her attention. That's what gets her excited. Number 5, give her affection without expecting sex in return. Give her a back rub without expecting it's going to lead to sex. That's showing attention. That's helping her relax. That will take some self-control on your part sometimes, but do it anyway. Number 6, help her around the house. Again, especially if she's working on a job outside the home, she cannot be expected to do that job and then come home and take care of everything in the house. Learn how to cook and cook occasionally. Learn how to do the laundry and do the laundry. Run the vacuum cleaner occasionally. Actually, instead of putting the dishes in the sink or on the counter, go ahead and wash them or put them in the dishwasher. Don't go with that universal sign of putting the knife on the sink because you might use it later. Go ahead and clean it up. I've counseled couples where it just drove one of them crazy that their spouse would leave dishes in the sink or on the counter. They wanted that clean at all times. Well, you should have known that before you married her. And number 2, you need to follow through and try to do that as much as possible. Try not to take not tonight as a personal rejection. That's hard, again, for us men. But here's something that I have suggested to couples. Find a sign that's known to you only that tells the spouse that you would like to have sex. You can actually get pillows that say yes or no. Or you can decide something as long as the two of you know what it is. It's a way, at least, of saying, I'd really like to have sex. If you will, I'm ready, all right? Next, take a shower. Body odor does not go well with being close. You need to clean up. Not that many people like to engage in sex when you come home from the gym and you're dripping with sweat. They want you to take a shower first. Ask why she isn't interested in you. Communication again. Is there something you're doing that you need to change? Or is it something that it's just here right now? It's not about you. Maybe it's been a bad day at work. Maybe she actually does have a headache, etc., etc. Ask, what's the problem? And tell her she is beautiful to you. I don't know too many women who could do without any compliment like that. She wants to know that she is beautiful to you. And ladies, if he tells you and he's being earnest, believe him. Despite what you may think of your body, that does not mean he doesn't like your body. I just got some thought questions here, both for men and for women. Number one, questions to women. Is it all right in a significant argument to break down and cry? In the same situation, is it all right for your husband to get angry? You see, sometimes a woman's response to feeling unloved is that she breaks down and cries. Women sometimes break down and cry to manipulate their husbands. There is a difference. It's not fair to do that. And it is not fair for a husband to get angry and storm off. That's not fighting fair. Men, is it all right to be angry at your wife if she rejects you because you show no regard for her feelings or needs? Maybe that's why you're having trouble with her. You're not even trying to meet her needs, whether it be emotional, sexual, or anything else. Just help around the house, maybe. Women, is it all right to be angry at your husband for looking at another woman if you refuse to let him look at you? Don't think so. You need to at least let him look at you. Then you can give him an elbow, maybe. What you find out is that as couples mature and they become that they know they love each other, instead of, you were looking at her, you'll get a, did you see her? Women will actually point another woman out. And they don't get excited about it. There's no idea that he's going to run off with her or chase her down or anything like that. It can sometimes be a fun thing between them. Not usually in the first 5 to 10 years of marriage, though. We've talked about this one before. If a man feels disrespected, he's going to feel unloved. These are just some general points. Men generally regard their work as the most important part of their self-image. They need to feel that they're providing for their family. Sometimes this vision destroys them and their relationships don't achieve balance. I've used this illustration sometimes. Some men are climbing the ladder of success, but what they find when they get to the top is that it's been leaning against the wrong wall all along. And now it's too late. Yes, you want to provide, but she may not want the Mercedes Benz and the penthouse suite kind of thing. She may be happier with something a lot less if you're home and with her more. You need to find out and get balance in it. Women, a lack of affirmation or rejection may lead a man to look for satisfaction somewhere else. Pornography, prostitution, affairs, and it can work the other way. Like we said, we're going to reiterate it tonight. Men and women are about equal on having affairs. Another thing, if conflict is unresolved, it's only going to grow stronger and it will lead to more problems. Don't ignore problems. Work on solving them or at least alleviating them. Why is sex so important to a man? Well, regular, mutually enjoyed sex is critical for a man to feel loved and desired. Ladies, that means you have to be an active, interested participant. Laying there like a rag doll is going to demonstrate you don't care for sex or for him. Sex gives a man self-confidence and stress release. When a man doesn't have sexual release for a while, he begins to show signs of stress, such as a lack of patience or angry outbursts. He may not even be aware of how much it's affecting him until he gets sexual release. Then he may literally collapse and fall asleep. The release of that tension much of the time is immediate and it's definitive. So what happens when a wife refuses to have mutually enjoyed sex with her husband? Number one, he feels that incredible rejection. It can lead to depression, alienation, resentment, and hurt, and it will be displayed most likely as anger, even though it's something else. I've told you before, you may need to schedule sex. Our lives are so busy, we need to set aside time for it. But realize, even when you set aside time for it, a lot of the time it's not going to happen. But if you can have sex 2 or 3 times instead of 10 times, at least you're having more than you were. Don't underestimate the need for an environmental change. A vacation can work wonders. There's something about getting out of the house, getting away from the yard, getting away from all the things that have to be done that relaxes both of you and allows you to have more fun together, to feel like having sex. My wife and Deb Dutton taught a ladies' class for several times, and because so many questions were asked about sex in that class, myself, Mel Sheesby, and my wife, Debbie, wrote a paper, an information paper, if you will, 10 things Christian men wish their wives knew about sex. If you want a copy of this, I've got about 15. If we run out, I'll get more, but I've got them up here. Come see me whenever we get through. What does a woman have to do? I have heard comedians talk about this, and there's a whole lot of truth to it. Just be willing and show up naked. So, what happens when there's a potential affair in the air? There's going to be 2 categories which are going to be fueling its progression. In the first category are internal factors related to one's relationship with their spouse. Anger and resentment. Something that hasn't been done, something that hasn't been met, something that's been done that was resented. There may be a feeling of betrayal. You haven't lived up to what you said you were going to do. There may be disrespect, and that may be real or it may be imagined. It can be imagined. There may be a feeling that your spouse has no concern for your needs. That's why you go out looking for something to begin with. It may be just a feeling of loneliness. This goes back to what I say about if you go on business trips for long periods of time and there's nothing to do except work and stay in a hotel room, you can sometimes start looking for an affair. Or there may be just frustration or depression. Now, the other category relates to one's relationship with a potential person that they want to be with. On some level, this person is showing emotional and giving emotional fulfillment. And that is how most affairs start. I have only run across one affair where the intent was to fulfill sexual fulfillment from the very beginning. That was the object. The rest of the time, they were searching for emotional fulfillment, which led to the sexual fulfillment. Then there's the excitement and intrigue. Medical science still knows almost nothing about the human body. It is so intricate. It is so detailed what God has done with us. You see, when we are infatuated, our body produces chemicals which makes a change in us. And if we start looking to have an affair, guess what? Those chemicals are reproduced again. And I will tell you, it'll feel good. You'll want it. It'll feel good to have a desire to plan something, to look forward to something when you haven't looked forward to it. You'll want to be with this other person. And it may provide you with hope that, hey, I can get back in a decent relationship again. I don't want the relationship I'm in. But the reason why I put this slide up, it's the same thing as it is for infatuation. It's going to wear off. When a couple comes to my office and one or both of them are looking to find someone new, I tell them, you better take a good hard look because there's a very good reason why most of those people are available out there. And you may not want to get rid of the one you've got because you know their attributes. You don't know what's in this other person. So what will happen, just like if we are having sex before marriage, we're going to be feeling all these things on one side, and it's going to be in a battle with the ones on the other side, and it's going to cloud our judgment. We're not going to see things clearly. There's too much emotion involved, too many things that we don't control. We have to understand, I'm not going to tell you that an affair won't be wonderful for a while. But what I see is that most of the time it ends up turning very bad. And we're going to talk about a Bible story a little bit later on just with that. What happens is that as the adultery goes forward, bills have to be paid, work has to be accomplished, personality traits or habits appear that weren't visible prior. There can be a totally new family dynamic to have to contend with. You know, when you've got kids from a previous marriage, now you've got multiple other problems you never had before. Will this new spouse let you discipline their children? Will they stand with you when you discipline them? What about the ex-spouse? Are they going to challenge you? Are they going to make life miserable for you? You got to think about these things. Having an affair, yeah, it's going to feel good at first, but you're not going to be thinking about these other things. The problem is, once you get to a certain point, it's too late to go back to the old relationship, but you aren't happy with the new one. And the cycle begins again. Many times the new relationship ends in divorce, just like the first one. I didn't have the time to look it up, but there's a lot of discussion about the divorce rate in the United States, and it's quite high. But it's actually misleading. A predominant number of the multiple divorces are by the same people. They get divorced 2, 3, 4 times. And so that rate goes up. It's not quite as dire. I'm not saying it's good by any means, but it's not quite as dire as what the statistics show. I have seen couples get a divorce, end up marrying someone who looks like the old spouse, who acts like the old spouse, and has the same problems of the old spouse. You would think someone would take a look. But no, they keep getting right back into it. Maybe it's not them. Maybe it's you. Maybe you haven't corrected the problem. I said we were going to talk about a Bible story. Can we have desire and lust and have it turned into rejection and hatred? Oh yeah. Reading 2 Samuel 13, 1 through 18. Now it was after this that Absalom, the son of David, had a beautiful sister whose name was Tamar, and Amnon, the son of David, loved her. Amnon was so frustrated because of his sister Tamar that he made himself ill, for she was a virgin, and it seemed hard to Amnon to do anything to her. But Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shemaiah, David's brother. And Jonadab was a very shrewd man. He said to him, "O son of the king, why are you so depressed morning after morning? Will you not tell me?" Then Amnon said to him, "I am in love with Tamar, the sister of my brother Absalom." Remember that sentence. I am in love with Tamar. Then Jonadab said to him, "Lie down on your bed and pretend to be ill. When your father comes to see you, say to him, 'Please let my sister Tamar come and give me some food to eat, and let her prepare the food in my sight, that I may see it and eat it from her hand.'" So Amnon lay down and pretended to be ill. And when the king came in to see him, Amnon said to the king, "Please let my sister Tamar come in and make me a couple of cakes in my sight, that I may eat them from her hand." Then David sent to the house for Tamar, saying, "Go now to your brother Amnon's house and prepare food for him." So Tamar went into her brother Amnon's house, and he was lying down. And she took dough, kneaded it, and made cakes in his sight, and baked the cakes. She took the pan and dished them out before him, but he refused to eat. And Amnon said, "Have everyone go out from me." So everyone went out from him. Then Amnon said to Tamar, "Bring the food into the bedroom, that I may eat it from your hand." So Tamar took the cakes which she had made and brought them into the bedroom to her brother Amnon. When she had brought them to him to eat, he took hold of her and said, "Come, lie with me, sister." But she answered him, "No, my brother, do not violate me, for such a thing is not done in Israel. Do not do this disgraceful thing. As for me, where could I get rid of my reproach? And as for you, you will be like one of the fools in Israel. Now therefore, please speak to the king, for he will not withhold from you." However, he would not listen to her, and since he was stronger than she, he violated her and lay with her. Then Amnon hated her with a very great hatred, for the hatred with which he hated her was greater than the love which he had loved her. Doesn't seem possible, does it? But the truth of the matter, it was not love. It was lust. He wasn't concerned with Tamar's reputation or future or well-being. He wanted to have sex. And then when he had sex, it was all over. Well, what's that saying? Why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free? Well, maybe there's a lot of truth to that. It's another thing about not having sex before marriage, not basing your decisions while engaging in sexual relations. There's so many things that are wrong with this situation, it's almost unbelievable. Yet many tales of lust are just as sordid. You look back through history and you see how many stories there are of lust and what it ended in, with murder and deceit and wars even fought over lust. Amnon intended to deceive everybody by his false pretenses. He knew what he was attempting to do was wrong, and he had no regard for Tamar's feelings or how it would affect him or Tamar. Tamar tried to remind him of that. He didn't listen. He was not thinking of an honorable, acceptable way to potentially win her affection. Tamar's feelings or the consequences of the situation didn't matter, only that he fulfill that sexual desire. He wouldn't listen to her pleadings. We know that the consequences of his actions left Tamar's reputation ruined, and her chances for a respectable marriage were virtually non-existent after that. Also, it ended up in Amnon's murder and a scandal for David and his family. You see, lust does not consider potential dangers or outcomes. It doesn't care if lives are ruined. It doesn't regard the feelings or the needs of others. It's not interested in a meaningful relationship. It only wants what it wants. Again, this points out one of the main reasons why God says fornication and adultery are sinful. He knows that lust clouds our judgment and usually leads to far more sin than just that act. Something else that I borrowed from the Equip workshop, Jerry and Lynn Jones. Can we actually map out the steps leading to adultery? Jerry and Lynn Jones presented this in Orlando by authoring a blueprint which shows the progressive steps to adultery. Number one is attraction. Almost all of us have some sort of criteria for someone that we are more attracted to. Maybe we like blondes or brunettes. Maybe we like tall or we like short. Maybe we like skinny or we like a little plump. There's all kinds of things like that. That's not necessarily a problem. That's just a preference. Number two, how do you know whether a man is a problem or not? I will probably cover this when I start getting to apologies. It has to do with attitudes. You can tell when someone's looking. If you've ever been around a worldly workplace, you can tell who's looking for an affair. It's actually pretty evident. And if a spouse can't really tell, they're probably not really looking. Mostly what I'm talking about when I say it's not an issue, it's when a husband and wife have been together for a while, they know about each other. Okay, I'm going to say it. We had some people move in to our membership one time, and Rex and I knew there was an affair going on within the first 2 weeks. And the only thing we did was just look at how they interacted. I was with the man one day when his wife had run off with another man, and he was devastated, of course. And he said, "Oh, I don't know what happened. Our marriage has been so good." I looked at him and said, "You liar. I have watched y'all in church. You won't even look each other decently in the eye. You sit 3 feet apart and glower at each other. You can tell. You can tell when a man's on the hunt. And someone who is looking to be hunted can tell when someone's on the hunt." In this particular case, the husband would sit by another man's wife rather than sit by his own wife. Once or twice, maybe you know that, every church service he was at. We could tell. We couldn't prove it. It took 2 years before we actually found proof. I'm just saying, most of the time, if you're looking, you can tell whether it's a problem or not a problem if a man's looking at a woman or if a woman's looking at a man. Number 2 is proximity. This is where you have close contact with them. A workplace. This is why a lot of affairs start in the workplace. You're with each other, you interact with each other, you talk to each other, you socialize together. But that does not mean that you're out to have an affair. It just means that it can lead to an affair. Then, if you are attracted to them, you are in proximity to them, and you begin interacting with them, next step. Again, not necessarily a problem. We as humans are going to interact with someone that, let's say, we work with or we come in contact with. It's just normal. Of course, now we've got Facebook and TikTok and, I don't know, proliferation of all these things where we can have contact. For the longest time, we had chat rooms. Chat rooms, I mean, the affairs just bloomed with the onset of chat rooms. That seems to have kind of gone by the wayside and been replaced by other things. The next item in here is disclosure. Okay, you're interacting with them. You talk about your kids, you talk about your dog, you talk about how the day was, but now, it just feels so terrible. My wife is neglecting me. She doesn't even show me any consideration anymore. And then comes equity. Well, my husband is exactly the same way right now. I am fed up with him not showing me any attention. Now we're getting close to the edge of the cliff. Nothing up to this point has been a sin. Nothing up to this point necessarily means there will be an affair. But at this point, many times what happens is there's an emotional adultery. There's not yet actual physical adultery, but there is in one's mind. It's dangerous. I'm not going to say in every case that's an absolute sin, but we know, again, by what God has said, we can have we can lust and desire without committing an actual act. So we've got to be careful. Why we're saying this is, If you find yourself in this situation, you are attracted to someone, you are close to them, you interact with them, and you slip and you begin to share intimate details with them, you're walking down a pathway that's extremely dangerous. And you need to stop right there. And then if you don't, it will probably lead to the actual physical adultery, the sexual intercourse. So is one sin worse than another? No, not necessarily. To God, sin is sin, no matter what it is. But let's be honest. If you find yourself committing emotional adultery, in your mind, you want to have an emotional and a physical relationship with this person, you are committing emotional adultery, and you need to put a stop to it right there. At that point, it is only between you and God. If you haven't disclosed that to them, you haven't gone to a motel, you haven't started charging money on your credit card to take him or her out to eat or so on and so forth, you can stop it right there. And it's only between you and God. But once you go to the physical aspect of it, now you've got a real problem. No matter what happens, there's going to be an issue. Either you're going to take a few steps in and realize you're in over your head and try to back out. Then you're going to be faced with a choice. If your spouse hasn't found out, do I tell them or do I live with the guilt the rest of my life? If you do that and you don't have guilt, you've got another problem. Your conscience is seared. If a Christian has an affair, there should be guilt. A conscience is what God puts in us to tell us, you went over the line. You did something wrong. And you need to feel bad about it. You need to feel bad about it, not to feel bad about it, but to do something about it, to repent of it. Feeling bad about committing sin is not what God wants. He wants you to feel bad enough to ask for forgiveness, to repent of it. Women and men are equally guilty of committing adultery. And some Christians are just as perverted or sinful as worldly people at times. I've had some people look very strangely at me when I say that. If it's in the world, it's in the church. Now, not to the same extent. So don't get in despair. But there are still cases. I have personally dealt with multiple cases of incest, some between two Christians, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse, perversion, you name it. About the only major situation that I can think of that I haven't dealt with is murder. Anybody remember Wendell Winkler? Well known within the Churches of Christ. Shot in the back by his wife, who left him there to die for a long time and took the kids and went to the beach. If it's in the world, it's in the church. Don't be shocked by that. You know that passage, and such were some of you. It is possible. Look at Paul. Paul committed murder. He set people up to be executed, to be imprisoned. But he repented, and he said, I've been forgiven. I think he felt guilty the rest of his life about that. I think that's what motivated Paul to endure what he endured. But he knew he could be forgiven. So we need to be on the lookout for these things and not be shocked if we discover them within the church, but to do something about it. and to give someone a chance to repent. Now, if they don't repent, we may need to disfellowship, but we need to try to bring them around. So, how do we survive an affair? You find yourself in a position where you think you might want a divorce. Well, I just now looked at my watch. We're not going to have time to go through this, so we will pick up on this subject next week. We're going to be covering surviving an affair and the 5 languages of apology. There's going to be a lot of information when it comes to the 5 steps of apology. Most of us don't know how to apologize. An apology requires far more than the words, "I am sorry." Far more. So we're going to be covering that. How do we apologize? To our fellow man, to our spouse, to God. Because you see, the 5 steps to apology refers to our relationship with God as much as it does to our marriage or our friendship. So hopefully we'll see you next week, and then we'll get on those subjects. Again, if you're interested, I have these papers up here. Y'all have a good rest of the week.